Dodo Motsisi utdannet sosiolog fra Sør-Afrika, men har siden 1977 levd i eksil. De siste 2 årene har Zimbabwe vært hennes tilholdssted. Der har hun med Det lutherske verdensforbund som oppdragsgiver arbeidet med å bevisstgjøre befolkningen i forhold til sine levevilkår og i arbeidet med å forandre dem. Hun målbærer dessuten en kritisk holdning til mye av det hjelpearbeidet som drives fra nord til sør. Dodo Motsisi, are you telling Norwegians to mind their own business and stop interfering in the third world?
Well, the way you say it is very interesting. In a sense, yes, that is appropriate. But whilst we are saying that, I think fundamentally what we are trying to put across is that when the Norwegians, in whatever form of aid that they are giving to the third world countries, and particularly maybe to our region in Southern Africa, Zimbabwe being one of that countries in that region, that the forms and levels of material aid should be only in as far as the people in Southern Africa are requesting that aid, and that they should give the aid on the terms that are given by the people. So, for instance, if the government of Zimbabwe or the people of Zimbabwe, through various non-governmental organizations, say we need aid in water development programs, the Norwegians shouldn't come and offer us aid in killing tsetse fly. We will determine what is the most pressing need, and therefore, if the Norwegians, well-intentioned, give us help, then they should give that help to assist in the programs that we think are the most pressing for our people. This is all that we are saying.
So we are not always doing a good research before we start a program?
In a sense, yes, that is correct. Because we know of a number of agencies, not only in Norway, who are rather interested in getting quick results. Now, they were interested, for instance, in having a project that is well written and say people will state exactly in 2 to 3 years' time we shall have accomplished 1, 2, and 3. Now, you cannot be that technical and systematic in that fashion, in that very cold fashion, when you work with human beings. Because in our areas of operation, you find that we are facing the crisis of destabilization by South Africa. We are facing the crisis of the so-called constructive engagement by the USA, which are political economic crises in their nature. And therefore, we have to raise awareness in teams of researchers, like we operate in our organization, to raise awareness about, for instance, who creates hunger in a particular area and who sustains that hunger. And what are the forces, national, international, that affect a certain population in a given province or a region. Now, you cannot do that by just saying, within 2 years' time, you expect wonderful results. And if you don't get those results, then you don't give help. It means it is aid with strings attached, because you are working with human beings. The human element itself has got to be given more respect and therefore more time, And that is why we're talking about the assistance given on our own terms. Say, for instance, if we want assistance on technical projects and also on projects on communication, social awareness programs, then you should give us help there. But we should be the ones to determine the kind of help.
So you are then going to the root causes, and you are talking with people about their problems in order to motivate them and make them aware of what they need.
Yes, we would say that this new element in the program of the Lutheran World Federation in Zimbabwe has just started a few, let's say 1.5 to 2 years back. And we have started this kind of emphasis on communication with the community before starting any project, trying to assess exactly how the community perceive their own needs, whether the need is for hunger first, to eradicate hunger, and therefore start agricultural projects, or whether the need is to provide clean potable water. We which is the basis of all forms of life. So what we are saying is that before any kind of a project is going to take place, we need to dialogue, debate and discuss with our communities and find out from them exactly what they want. And it is out of that, on the basis of that information, that we will use our technical inputs, we will use our forms of communication through workshops, in discussions and so on, to develop the resources, human resources and other resources that they have, just so that they can actually be able to develop themselves. Because in our view, we find that when communities struggle to develop themselves, we call that development. So development is struggle. When communities are struggling to participate in projects, we find that very important, and we say development is also community participation, So we feel that, in a nutshell, really, in our view, and not only the view of our organization, but the view of many non-governmental organizations, and in a sense, all the view of government, is that development is the breaking away from all kinds of dependency, economic and otherwise, and on the other hand, to attain self-reliance. So we see our technical inputs, whether you're a sociologist or a social worker or an agriculturalist, only in the form of complementing or increasing the capability of the peasants or of the women or of the pastors, whichever section we're helping, so that they can really develop and become self-reliant.
So you are then having workshops where you're talking with youth, young people, women and pastors, and you get in a real dialogue with them. You get a response from them?
We really do get in a dialogue. Again, you'll understand that through the colonial system, our people really have not been given a chance to become educated. Now, education, we will divide the education for domination and education for liberation. The education for domination definitely is not the one that we want, where you find the technical aspects, the so-called development planners outside the lives of the people. Now, we believe that in these workshops, we will take a particular issue, for instance. Say we concentrate on the issue of who is creating hunger amongst us and who maintains that hunger and what are the mechanisms. Then we look into, say, a particular area and ask the people there to prepare for the taking place of a workshop there. And we invite, through the pastors, through the church workers, the women and the youth, the people in that community, and we come together to discuss then. Somebody will introduce the topic, and our part in this is to really feed in information, feed in forms of analysis, what we call social analysis, and let the people understand that when a certain area is underdeveloped, it is not because our present government does not want it to be underdeveloped, or it is not because the peasants there are lazy, but it is because historically Africa had been colonized, and therefore the question of monocultures has been created, and people as nations have been forced, for instance, to produce, like in Senegal, they were forced to produce rubber when the people were dying. Or in Tanzania, they were forced to produce sisal when they could be producing wheat and other forms of food, maize and so on. So we are saying people have got to understand that there are national forces and international forces that affect their lives. Amongst the international forces, we find that there are bodies like the International Monetary Fund, which really impose themselves on our governments. For instance, they have asked in Zimbabwe that our present government should reduce food subsidies. It should do away with public spending, which means it should cut down on education and health. It should also devalue the currency. It should also freeze the wages of the workers. And it is exactly these things that the government is trying to raise. Recently, they have raised the minimum wage of workers, up to something like 143 Zimbabwean dollars for the workers. And ever since the independence of Zimbabwe, if there is anything that the government has done for the people for now, it is bringing health facilities, bringing educational facilities, that is building schools preschool facilities in the rural areas in particular, because most of Zimbabwe is rural and the population there is more than 80%. So that, in other words, the IMF is saying to Zimbabwean government, do not do anything good for your people. So would we not say that that is a form of aid that we really are rejecting, you know, so that these loans, when they are given by the IMF and the World Bank, they are not to support the livelihood of our people, and especially the poorer classes, that is the peasants and the workers. But in fact, they are dominating over and above our governments. So we find our governments, even when they try a lot to improve the situation for the people, it is difficult. So we as researchers, we bring this kind of knowledge to our pastors, we bring this kind of knowledge to our women and youth so that they understand how the world functions and how it affects our situation.
Yes. But the level of knowledge is very different, isn't it, in a small community? Isn't it hard to maybe communicate on difficult issues like this?
It is difficult to communicate on issues like this, but you know, if you go to somebody who is hungry and you find out from them, why actually are you hungry? And they tell you, I have no job. And you go beyond that and find out, now who else here does not have a job? They will tell you. And you try and bring those people together to try and understand, why do family so and so many people in the community not have job? What is the situation?
So you go to the basic questions.
So you go to the basic questions and you try and organize workshops or discussion forums where then people who are affected by particular issues, you know, like for instance, say youth unemployment, come together and discuss the issue. What we are trying to do here through our workshops and through the planning, research, evaluation and monitoring unit is that our research should be the kind of research where when we have got some data, we go back to our people and let them also evaluate the data, and we do not end up by having them being objects of research. So they can also challenge our...
So it's a constant dialogue between the peasants and the planners.
Yes, and we feel that that is the only way that we can help our people develop, mobilize for development. Mm-hmm. Because we feel very strongly that development that does not mobilize the person is the end and the means of development. And therefore, if we do not mobilize the person to develop intellectually as well as materially, then in fact we could be agents of imperialism ourselves.
It seems like a very good theory, this, but you have experience that this works?
In a sense, yes, we do have experience that this works. For instance, we once had a very interesting workshop with some church workers and pastors over the issue of, the thing that we talked about earlier on, about the question of hunger. And it was interesting that our people were telling us that, their hunger results because of land pressure. That land pressure, therefore, has resulted because the commercial white farmers have taken most of the beautiful land, the arable land, and they are in the land, the communal areas, which is mostly arid, which means dry. The water facilities and the land is not really good for farming. And so this was just one knowledge that we did not know that our people know, but it showed us that in their own very rudimentary way, they have learned that there are different types of soils. In one part of the country where there is red soils, and that is mostly where the commercial farmers are, who are largely at the moment still white. You do have some black farmers who are, coming up. But this meant to us that it means our people know the types of soils. They know the water levels as well. Now, what we need to do is to complement that, their knowledge, because after all, they've been living in these areas for so long. What we need to do is to find out how much knowledge do they have of a particular issue. Then we complement that. And this is what we try to do in this workshop. Of course, by exposing who are the people who who control our lives, like giving information about the World Bank and the Monetary Fund. So it does help, and we are experiences that our people are never ignorant, but we need to know that.
But you then would like foreign organizations to do more on this field concerning the motivation of the people, doing more research before they put capital into a country?
In fact, you are hitting on the head of the nail. We feel that it is important to try and balance, in monetary terms as well, technical inputs as well as inputs for methods, many more methods of communication. At the moment, we are using workshops because they are appropriate to our situation right now. But you know that there are many more methods of communication. And we need, therefore, to develop these, because we feel that the individual, the person, has got to be developed intellectually as well, to understand what is happening in the world around them and to be able to connect that with the global situation. Therefore, we feel that, for instance, the programs that we have on social analysis, with the pastors and other church workers, that they really are of good assistance to our people, and they do say so. They always, after every workshop, when we talk about the scarcity of land and the church's response to that, they will always say, the last recommendation will be, we want more workshops. So honestly, we are saying to our, donors and people who give financial aid, they should put almost an equal footing in expenditure, in terms of capital expenditure, on giving technical inputs in the form of, say, managerial, administrative, and other technical forms of assistance. But they should equally understand when we talk about methods of motivation, communication, and creating social awareness over issues. Because our people are interested in this. They are interested in non-formal methods of education. Again, you will understand that most of our people, through the colonial period, had no chance to go to formal education, to go to schools. So when you have these adult literacy classes, we can complement them with programs of social awareness raising. So this, for us, is an important area as well. It is vitally important, and we just hope that, the funding agencies that assist in many forms will understand this and really take it very seriously.
I'll ask you a last question. Maybe it's more personal, but you have been working with development projects now for quite a few years. Has this work been a development for you?
I have seen a number of people struggling. I was a social worker at home, and I was working for some 3 months in a rural, remote area. And I have seen how that community was struggling, in one of these Bantustans, to eke out a living out of soil that you see really. This is sandy soil. You can't do anything with it, So this social and political will to strive for justice has meant a lot, has imprinted a lot of survival attitudes within my own mind. And therefore, whilst I do not want really to talk about my own person, because I feel many people, many more people are committed to the struggle, for justice and socio-economic justice and political justice as well. But I have learned a lot in working with marginalized people, working especially with women and the youth, and their own experiences have made a very strong imprint on my mind on how it is important, if you believe in an idea, that you try and devise correct means to achieve that idea. And always those means should be the ones that you have chosen to be correct. And part of the struggle, I think, is the struggle to say no to any forms of outside dominance.